today's town hall, we ask that you please observe the following courtesies. Save all questions until after General Odierno has completed his comments. Soldiers are posted in the audience with microphones for your use. If you have a question, please stand up so you can be identified, and a soldier will bring a microphone to you. When General Odierno acknowledges you, please identify yourself by name and unit affiliation prior to asking your question.
Kathy.
Kathy is here. First round's wife is Linda. We have
I can mention that they're in the audience. Got a hand.
She's been running around back and forth. We were watching her. She's like, well, there's a job. Yeah. Looks like the posse's moving. The chief isn't with him yet. You'd be able to tell. He's tall. But the posse's moving. Well, there's Ron. Isn't it? Now, that front one? Have them take their seats over there.
Ladies and gentlemen, the town hall will commence in 2 minutes. Good morning and welcome to Clay Kaserne, the home of the United States Army Europe and your home in Germany. Today, we are honored to have with us the commander of the United States Army Europe, Lieutenant General Donald M. Campbell, and his wife Anne, and the 38th Chief of Staff of the Army, General Raymond Odierno, and his wife Linda. At this time, I'm honored to introduce to you the Commander of the United States Army Europe, Lieutenant General Donald M. Campbell.
All right, Wiesbaden, how are you this morning? All right, that's not too bad. We want to welcome the Odiernos to Wiesbaden. As my good friend Dave Carson says, your home in Germany. I'm even speaking it, Dave. I want to welcome Mrs. Odierno, Linda especially. Linda's been a great Army spouse for 37 years. She knows this business very well. She's had a son who has served, 2 other great kids. Linda, thank you for all you do for Army families, civilians, and our wonderful soldiers. The 38th Chief of Staff of the Army is no stranger to any of you. He has served at multiple combat tours in multiple positions, company command all the way to 4-star in Iraq. The last 12 years this Army's been at war, your Chief of Staff has served about half of it in combat with you. So about 6 years in combat of the 12 we've done. He knows this business in and out. He's been our Chief of Staff for about 1.5 years now. And sir, we're proud to have you in Wiesbaden, the home of the United States Army Europe, and a whole bunch of other great soldiers, civilians, and family members. Welcome to Wiesbaden. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a big welcome to the 38th Chief of Staff of the Army.
Thank you very much. Can you all hear me okay? Just working? Yeah, okay, good. Well, first, it's great to be back here. I was here about a year ago. Had a chance to come by, and I noticed that there's a lot more people in Wiesbaden today than there was a year ago as we continue to consolidate the U.S. Army Europe headquarters here. It's nice to come back and see the construction, a lot more done with the construction, and it's clear that this plan is coming together. I know it's been difficult. I know there's still people moving back and forth from Heidelberg to here and some other places, but it's really good to see this starting to come together. You know, U.S. Army Europe continues to play an important role in our national security for our nation. Whether it be continue to support and building relationships with our NATO allies, as well as other partners here in Europe, but also in support of the conflicts in Afghanistan and other areas of instability, whether it be in Syria, Israel, Turkey, as we continue to deploy forces around the world to support our own security needs. And U.S. Army Europe continues to be a centerpiece of that strategy. And although we have downsized here in Europe over the last couple years by about between 8,000 and 10,000 people, I think we're now getting ready to settle out here in Europe. We have the structure that we think we're going to need for the future, and it'll be one that continues to be really important in the strategy as we go forward. I had a chance yesterday to go down to U.S. Army AFRICOM down in Stuttgart, talk to the new commander, General Dave Rodriguez there, and he was talking to me about the great support that he gets from U.S. Army Europe in supporting many of the things they're trying to do in Africa. And that says a lot about how important this is. So the first message I have for you is this remains a key piece of what we want to do in the future. You're going to play a very important role in that as we continue to move forward. The second point, I know that the 5th Corps headquarters is getting ready to come back. I think they've started to come back already. I had the opportunity to talk to Lieutenant General James Terry today on the phone. We talk quite regularly, but they are finishing up an incredibly successful year in Afghanistan where we've really made quite significant progress in transitioning more and more responsibility to the Afghans. So I'm very proud of the work that 5th Corps has done. I appreciate the great support that their families have gotten back here from all the great leaders and community back here as they were forward deployed. And they've really done our country proud. And unfortunately, as we all know, 5th Corps is getting ready to inactivate. And as I tell everyone, it's somewhat personal to me. I was once the Chief of Staff of 5th Corps back in the late 90s and served in 5th Corps on 3 different occasions. So it's hard for me to watch it go, but it's one of those things that we simply have to do right now. But they're going out with significant glory, finishing up a very difficult mission and doing it very well. So I'm very, very proud of them. I want to thank Don Campbell for his leadership and the continued development here in USAREUR. I want to thank the Garrison Commander Dave Carsons and the Sergeant Major Mustafa for the great work that they continue to do here in Wiesbaden. Linda and I have had an opportunity to go around to all the different concerns here and see the progress being made, and it seems like we're on the right track. I think as many of you know, over the last couple months, I've testified about 6 or 7 times in front of Congress, along with the Secretary of the Army, talking about the future, talking about our future budgets. And right now we're in some difficult times as we go through some transition. And this year has been specifically difficult because of, first, the surprise implementation of sequestration, which is about a $7 billion bill to the Army, and then also the fact that we actually were not given the right amount of money we need to support Afghanistan. So we've had to take an additional about $8 billion out of the Army budget to support Afghanistan. So because of that $15 billion shortfall for the last 6 months between March 1st and September 30th, we've had to take some draconian measures across the Army to reduce training, to talk about civilian furloughs, once 21 days, now 14 days. We're still trying to work that to a lower number, maybe go to 0, but we are not there yet. So there's significant decisions that we have to make based on the budget, and that's for the rest of this year. What we're hoping for now is, we testified last week, is that Congress will pass a 14 budget. And right now, I tell everyone there's 4 different budgets out there. There's the one that the President submitted, which we testified to last week, which fully supports our requirements, which backloads some cuts at the end of a 10-year period. Then the House has a version of the budget, the Senate has a version of the budget. And if they can't come to an agreement on those budgets, then we'll go into full sequestration, which is not good for our Army, it's not good for our national defense, which would be significant cuts over the next 10 years. So we're obviously hoping that Congress will be able to come to an agreement so we can start properly planning for the future. Because one of the biggest challenges we've had is the unpredictability of the budgets that we've had available to us. So we've not been able to utilize that money that we're given the most efficient, effective way, which impacts all of our soldiers, all of our civilians, and all of our family members. So we continue to try to talk about that message and make sure they understand the impacts on the individuals that have served so valiantly over the last 12 years, to include our great Army civilians and also our family members who sacrificed so much. So we continue to work that very carefully. So I think I don't have to talk to you about the potential impacts here on the community if in fact we don't get this problem fixed. So we're working very hard on that. Let me just take a few minutes to talk about where I see the Army headed. As I stand here today, I remind everybody that today we have 80,000 soldiers deployed. We have nearly 60,000 deployed to Afghanistan. We have another 12 to 15,000 in Kuwait. We have soldiers deployed to Turkey. We have soldiers deployed to Jordan. We have soldiers deployed to Qatar. We have soldiers deployed to Kosovo. And then we have about another 90,000 soldiers deployed in 150 countries around the world, to include you. But that also includes about 28,000 in Korea. And as you know, Korea has been in the forefront of the news lately. So the Army is playing a significant role as we continue to carry the heavy burden of making sure that we're able to provide security for this nation forward where it counts. And in every case, our soldiers are performing magnificently. And I'm incredibly proud of what they do, obviously supported by our great civilians. And that will continue on to the future. So our first priority as we move forward is to make sure everyone who is deployed forward has everything they need to be successful. They are trained properly, they are well led, and they have the most modern equipment for them to be successful as we continue to deploy them around the world. That's priority number 1. And as you know, the Army for years, we say, you know, we are here to fight our nation's wars. And we will continue to be a lead in the future on fighting our nation's wars, but that's not enough anymore. We have to have the ability as well to shape the future environment, to prevent conflict, which is really what we want to try to do. And so as we move forward, we talk about our Army being globally responsive and regionally engaged. And let me talk about that for a minute. Globally responsive is ensuring that we have the capability to move quickly, tailored and scaled forces, combat support, service support, anywhere in the world on short notice. We say we have to be able to do many missions at many speeds in many environments. And we have to be decisive when we get there. The second thing is we have to be regionally engaged. So we're going to align our forces regionally to units, to combatant commanders around the world to ensure they have the capability to shape their operational environment to prevent conflict. whether it be in Africa, whether it be in the Middle East, whether it be in the Pacific, and then here in Europe, where we continue to help develop our NATO partners and develop their capability as they go with us side by side in order to bring security around the world. So we'll make sure that our soldiers are trained and ready if we deploy them. We're going to have a future Army that's globally responsive and regionally engaged. The third priority is leader development. We have to make sure that we continue to keep our huge advantage that we have in developing great leaders, both non-commissioned officers, officers, and civilians. So we're going to publish in about 30 days a leader development program that will talk about how we have to continue to adjust and adapt our leader program so we can operate in more complex and difficult environments in the future. And this will include a change in how we train, but also a change in how we manage assignments, where we develop a broadening capability for all our non-commissioned officers and officers as we go forward. And then next, it's about understanding and ensuring that we reinforce the importance of our own profession. We are given unique responsibilities in this profession. It's important that we have competent leaders with high character who are committed to their unit, to the Army, and to their mission. And it's important that we remind ourselves of those who came before us. We stand on the shoulders of those who served before us, whether it be from the Revolutionary War through the current conflict. Our profession is one is seen in the and is held in the highest regard by the American people. And it's because of our character and commitment. And it's important that we continue to ensure we maintain that over time. So our priorities continue to be, as I said, make sure our soldiers deployed have the leaders, the training, and the equipment necessary to be successful, to make sure we stay globally responsive and regionally engaged, that we develop the best leaders in the world, and that we maintain the highest standards of our profession. And then finally, it's our ability to sustain the all-volunteer Army, to make sure that we continue to have the right resources and we continue to have the right compensation packages to support our great volunteers who raise their right hand in order to serve their country and to ensure that we sustain our security over time. So that's our priorities. And we'll execute those priorities. And one thing I guarantee you, although we're having lots of discussion about the budget right now, it will work itself out. It might be frustrating, might be a bit unpredictable, but it will work itself out. And the one thing I know is we start right now from a position of strength because we have the most capable, experienced combat force we've ever had. And we start from a position of strength. And I know that as we move forward 2 years from now, 5 years from now, and 10 years from now, we'll still have the best Army in the world. And we have to do that together, working hard in order for us to continue to be successful as we continue to ensure that we sustain the security of this great country. So let me close there. It's important for me to hear from you. I hope I get lots of good questions, tough questions. I look forward to that very much. And I want to thank you again for being here. So with that, let me turn it over for questions. Anybody? Who wants to go
You have a
first?
question over there to the left?
Okay.
Morning, sir. Master Sergeant Sadler from USAREUR Retention.
Yeah.
I know with the current budget constraints currently facing us now and the next FY, but I also know decisions made today affect us 3-4 years down the road. What type of effects do you see us as an Army with the decisions that are being made today that will affect us 3-4 years down the road?
Yeah, great question. So one of my concerns right now is over this last 6-month period is because we've had to reduce our training dollars and we've actually decreased the amount of training, I worry that that could stretch into 14 and 15 and affect our capability to provide, as I talked about, trained and ready forces for unknown contingencies. We have the dollars to train units going to Afghanistan, but if we have to deploy to another contingency, I'm a bit concerned if we don't get this budget thing fixed quickly, then we potentially could have a problem providing trained and ready units for unknown contingencies. And we've tried to make that very clear to everyone as we go forward. There's got to be another question out there somewhere.
Question?
I got one, sir.
Hi, sir. Up here.
I hear a voice. Oh, there.
Top
okay.
left side, sir.
Hello, sir. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Michelle Ryan. I'm assigned to 5th Corps. Thank you for coming today. Appreciate you and your wife both being here. One of the questions I have centers on the wear and appearance of the uniform. And specifically, if you'll forgive me, I wrote it down, so I will make sure I ask it correctly. What is the Army policy when it comes to female soldiers wearing headscarves? And is that subject to periodic review? And what are the types of considerations that go into that from the tactical through the strategic level? Thank you, sir.
Okay, now, can you define what you mean by headscarves?
Sir, what I mean specifically is female soldiers out in Army uniforms wearing headscarves while deployed.
And you mean underneath their Kevlar or just normally wearing scarves?
I mean out interacting with the unit or with the local population, sir, as apparently a sign of reaching out to the local population.
Yeah, okay, so there's two different questions. From an operational perspective, if you're on an engagement team, which is what you're talking about, one of the things we've found to be very effective is our females are actually incredibly effective at us understanding and gaining information with the local population. And so one of the means we've done to do this is wearing scars, which has gained them access. So from an operational perspective, we have allowed that to occur. So in the field, for operational reasons, we will allow that to happen. But unless you're in that environment, it will not be, you have to ask for an exception of policy based on some reason, whether it be a religious reason or others, and then it has to be approved up at my level, actually, to wear that. And it will be based on what we consider to be the impact on good order and discipline to the whole Army.
Sir, we have a question over here, sir.
Okay?
Sir, Gary Russ, Odessa. Sir, could you further, first off, I'd like to thank you for your commitment and your service to the Army. Thank you very much. Could you further discuss the commitment to the overseas engagement with our partners? I sense back in the States that there's a lack of interest and they want to continue to pull back due to the budget cuts and what have you. And on a personal basis, I think that personal engagement is most important.
Yeah, so we have and by the way, just so you know, I agree with you. So I agree with your premise. So when you deal with Congress, obviously with budget cuts, they think about the United States, they think about their districts, and they think about sustaining as much Army capabilities within their own states and districts, and so they really focus on that a little bit. It's up to us as military leaders, both military and civilian senior leaders, to explain to them the importance of our ability to stay connected, to reach out, to build relationships over time, which will pay benefits to us as when we're needed somewhere in the future. And so we're dedicated to that. So that's why I mentioned in the beginning, we're kind of dedicated to what we have left here in Europe now. We're dedicated to what we have in Korea. We're dedicated to a force forward in Kuwait and other places. We think those are important in order to build these relationships because they're key. We have some great examples. One I would tell you is that I use all the time is Pakistan. For about 10 years in the 90s, from the 90s to the mid-2000s, we broke off all mill-to-mill engagement with Pakistan. And that's cost us because we lost contact in developing their leaders, we lost contact in building trust, and so here when we needed them, we've had some difficulties. And that's a perfect, so we have other examples we can use. So we continue to talk to them about that so they understand the importance of that as we go forward. You know, for example, I mentioned NATO and the other European allies that we have and how they've stood side by side with us in Afghanistan. And we have other common interests. So it's important for us to continue to engage with them, develop strong relationships. So the first time you're not talking to somebody is when we're deploying somewhere. So it's up to us to continue to talk about that as we go forward. But your thought is right. There's a lot of people who want to pull everything back to the United States. And there'll be some of that occurs, but we're going to try to ensure that we continue to have enough forward where we can engage like you talked about.
Sir, I have a question via Twitter.
Okay.
Katie Bates asks whether or not the Army Corps of Engineers will maintain a presence in Germany.
The Army Corps of Engineers, Katie Bates, thanks for twittering in. I'm still getting used to all this. I like it. The Army Corps of Engineers, you know, one of the things I've learned as Chief of Staff of the Army, I don't know how many people are familiar with the Army Corps of Engineers, but they are all over the world. We have Army Corps of Engineers here in Europe, we have them in the Pacific, we have them all over the world, to include all over the United States. They will stay forward here. They will stay forward to the Pacific. They are an important component of us continuing to work infrastructure and assisting the combatant commanders in setting their theaters and helping them to develop their infrastructure. So they will remain a part of here and other places around the world. Anybody else?
Sir.
Sir, my name's Specialist Kiapos. I'm with Charlie Company's 2nd MI. My question is, when does the Army officially plan on updating its definition of discrimination to include lesbian, gays, bisexuals in the Army?
Yeah, we're in the process of doing that now. So we're rewriting all of our policies right now. And one of the things we're working now is also same-sex benefits and those kind of things. We're putting a policy out here in the next couple weeks that will address some of that, but not all of that. So we're slowly updating those. But now that you asked the question, I'll specifically check on that definition to see what it says, because we'll update that.
Thank you, sir.
Great question.
Sir, Lieutenant Colonel Manage Lucci, G3 Mobilization and Reserve Affairs. What are your thoughts regarding the Army National Guard hanging in there as a operational reserve or perhaps going back to strategic reserve?
Yeah, thanks. First, none of us want to see the National Guard go back to a strategic reserve. So we think, you know, over the last 12 years, I tell everyone that I think our structure has worked exactly how we planned it. We have an active component that's able to deploy immediately on contingencies with depth and support provided by our National Guard, who has played a significant role in all our deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan and other places around the world. So I think we've proven why we have this structure, why we need the combination of both together in the right balance. Obviously, as deployments decrease, it's going to become more and more difficult to get everyone involved in these deployments. So we're looking at many different ways, whether it be multi-component training, multi-component organizations, and then looking at how we continue to have combined deployments of all three components in order to sustain this relationship that we think is so important going forward. So for me, it's key. We're redeveloping the Army Force Generation process that will include the reserve component, that will put them through cycles where part of the force will always be in the operational reserve, where others are being reset. So they'll rotate through there just like the active units will rotate through as well. So there's many other initiatives such as that we'll continue to do. But we see it as a key piece as we move forward.
Sir, Major Hempstead, future ops, I'm to your left, sir. Oh, hey, sir.
Way left.
Sir.
Left flank.
Oh. Sir, do you see the regional line brigade system continuing long-term? And do you anticipate changes to the current plan for RAF based on budget constraints?
Yeah. So first, I want to reemphasize that it's not regionally aligned brigades, it's regionally aligned forces. I'm very sensitive to that because it's more than just brigades. It's combat support, combat service support units that will be involved. And yes, this is a long-term issue where we will rotate people through where they are capable of being available to all the combatant commanders to do a variety of things, from operational deployments to training, to exercises, to building partner capacity, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I see this continuing. There is money that's available from the combatant commands and there's money that we'll have involved in our O&M accounts that will help us to do that. Obviously, this is a new program, so we'll continue to iterate and improve it and figure out exactly how much needs to be spent in each area in order for it to be effective. But I'm confident that we'll find the money to do it in the budget.
Sir, I'm PFC and John Looney from Charlie Company, 2nd MI, and my question is, I've heard a lot of talk of switching to a garrison army. From a big army standpoint, what would you say would be the focus of that, sir?
Well, I mean, so I think we use that term for young men like you who've only been in the Army that's been at war. Before 2001, I had deployed for Desert Storm and a couple other places. But the Army, for the most part, what we mean by a garrison army is a home station army, one that has to stay ready, one that has to develop readiness. So the way I describe this is, when I first came in the Army in the 70s, our Army had a lot of problems. We weren't well trained, we weren't well resourced. We had a lot of discipline issues. We corrected that. And what we did is we built an Army that became well trained, understood its doctrine, understood how to execute that. What we did is we developed a readiness level so they were prepared to deploy when asked. So then when we were asked to deploy, we were successful. So what we mean by a garrison army is we're going back to an army where we're going to create readiness. So what we've been doing the last 12 years is consuming readiness. And now we got to recreate that readiness so we're prepared to go anywhere when asked. So although we use that as a way to describe it, but it's not an army that is just going to sit in garrison and do nothing. It's one that's going to train, it's going to create readiness, be prepared. We're going to go back to an expeditionary mindset where you have to be prepared to deploy to an area that is fairly remote and doesn't have a lot of essential items to it. Back to an army where we have to deploy very quickly into a theater that's not very mature. Because really for the last 7 or 8 years, we've been deploying into very mature theaters. That's a whole different way. If anybody was in here when we first went into Iraq in 2003, it was very primitive, very remote, and you had very few, it was an expeditionary deployment. We have to be prepared to do that again, no matter where it is in the world. And that's what we mean by that. So it's not a very good term. So it's not a garrison force. It's one that will train hard and be prepared to deploy no notice anywhere in the world.
Sir, we have a question here on the lower right.
Good morning, sir. My name is Lieutenant Colonel Gina North from Desenge, and I'm taking the bus from Heidelberg still. It's a great thing. I'm working in the lovely building behind us for about 2 weeks now. It's a great place if you don't cook coffee and set the alarm off from one kitchen for the whole entire building.
First of all, how big of a map do you have? Do you have to have like an app?
I have a map. We have a map published that people can get around. Or you don't sit in the bathroom for 15 minutes and 15 seconds and the lights go out. But my question is...
Technology.
High tech. But my question has to do with your guidance on leadership in the Army in the future. Is that guidance that you're going to publish, is that mostly for an Army that has a significant number of deployed soldiers, or does it make a difference at all in terms of assignments?
Yeah, thanks. First, the leader development strategy will both be for soldiers and civilians. I want to make that point. It's going to have a civilian strategy as well. But it's really about looking to the future and looking about how we want to develop leaders to operate in what I consider to be an ever-growing, more complex environment that we're going to have to operate in. So what it's going to define is what are the kind of characteristics of adaptability, flexibility that we're going to have as we develop our plans to operate in a future complex environment, whether it be one environment that now includes a variety of lethal capabilities, cyber, information operations, much more complex, nothing straightforward, how we operate in a lifetime where information moves at the speed of Twitter. We have to deal with all that. And that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. And so how do we have a leader development program that better prepares our non-commissioned officers and officers to operate in an environment like that? And do we have the right courses? Do we have the right assignments that enable them to understand this. And that's kind of where we're focusing. And same with our civilian corps as well.
Sir, Major Drew Kerrigan, 66 MI. With regard to your leader development priority, have you considered fully implementing the 360-degree evaluation? And by that I mean requiring one of all officers and then putting that information in front of selection and promotion boards.
Yeah, so we're going to do this at an iterative process. So we are beginning now with a 360-degree program. As you come in, you will start doing that, but that will be for your own use for now. And we are going to continue to do that. All the experts tell me, and I'm not completely convinced yet, that if we start that early on, people get used to it and they will self-correct themselves as they get honest feedback in these 360s. So as you come in today as a lieutenant, you're going to get one, and you continually do it throughout your career. And you should be able to develop this feedback in such a way that helps you to develop as a leader. There's a couple other things I'm doing, though. I'm going to dictate that we do one for battalion commanders and brigade commanders. We're still working, we're doing a pilot right now. We're doing a pilot of a combat brigade, a combat support brigade, and a combat service support brigade to go through this, where we do a 360, anonymous 360, and we determine on whether it goes to the senior raider or not as information. Right now, I don't plan on putting it in front of boards, but that doesn't mean in the future we might not decide to do that. I want to look at it a little bit. I want to study it and make sure we're doing the right thing.
Sir, Sergeant Sepulveda, HHC 2nd Signal Brigade. In reference to the changes to the Army uniform, the new jail, the Joint Light Tactical Vehicle, replacement to the M16, and basically with the budget cuts, is any of that going to happen?
Yes. So this is the problem we have. So what I have to do is maintain a balance. And the balance is end strength, modernization, which is what you're talking about in our readiness. So we're going to maintain that balance. We might have to slow down some programs, but we're going to move forward with them. The JLTV will continue as a replacement for the Humvee. There's a number of reasons why I want that. It's more mobile, it's more survivable, and it also allows us to put in the technology necessary to pass information around the battlefield, so we think it's important. We have the GCV that's going to replace the Bradley. The Bradley performed not so well in Iraq and Afghanistan, mainly in Iraq. It wasn't very survivable, can't carry a 9-man crew. It is not capable of inputting all the architecture we want to enable to pass information, so we're going to move forward with that. We're going to continue to invest in our information technology systems. So in the future, we're going to be able to get information down, and a soldier will have an iPhone-like capability that gives them intelligence, maps, everything else. We'll continue to move forward with that. So all of those things we're going to move forward, as well as continuing to modernize our aviation fleets. Those are our priorities. And there's a few others as well. So they're going to continue. They might take a bit longer than we wanted, but those programs will continue. Great question.
Sir, CW3 Elliott from user G1. The other side, sir.
Over.
Sir, my question has to do with sexual assault. In an effort to continue to eliminate sexual assault, do you support a separate entity to review, process, and prosecute alleged sexual assaults crimes, as some have recommended, as well as removing Commander's UCMJ authority?
No.
Easy.
But I know you had an explanation for that. Let me explain that. So there's a reason why I say no to that. First, it's a very complex problem. The UCMJ gives you flexibility that you don't have in any other legal system. So everybody looks at the high-end cases where it's a rape or some sort of sexual assault that can be proven and that you take to court. But a large majority of them, most prosecutors would never take to court. We can adjudicate some of those under UCMJ because of the ability of the commander to utilize the UCMJ to give Article 15s and other things. So I don't want to lose that flexibility that we have that allows us to prosecute across the spectrum. I think that's really important. Now, that said, we have to do a better job. In my mind, there's two problems we have. One is we have to change our culture. It should be unacceptable to anybody who wears this uniform for one of our females to be sexually assaulted or sexually harassed. We aren't there yet. And we have to, this is about us in this room. We have to fix that problem. We talk about us being soldiers, having each other's backs, standing up for each other. Well, if we're having sexual assaults between soldiers, we're not standing up for each other, and we're not doing what I expect out of our profession. So we got to fix it. Because to me, it's totally unacceptable. So in my mind, we have to do that. I think if we try to regulate punishment, it's not going to work. I think the systems we have in place are pretty good. We just have to make sure we use them properly and make sure that people have confidence in the systems we have to use them to ensure those who are guilty are punished. And that we protect the victim, but we also protect the person that's accused. That's how our system works. You got to protect both. And we got to be able to do that as we go forward. So I think we should maintain the UCMJ. I think there's some minor tweaks we can make to it to make it better. And I think we'll work with Congress to work that. But I think if they do a separate line, I think we're going to find prosecutions go down, and I think we're going to find a worse problem than it is now. That's my personal opinion.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, CW5, Jack Van Zanten, USAREUR Army USAREUR Food Advisor. Sir, what is your assessment on the use of using borrowed military manpower for KPs, cutting grass, et cetera, on retention, training, morale, et cetera?
Yeah. I don't know the answer to the question on the impact, but I will say this. I grew up in an army when up through maybe I was a colonel, where sergeant majors were responsible for maintaining their facilities. And they did a pretty good job. And we were able to work it out using red, green, amber cycles. So if it comes down to me choosing whether I can keep more soldiers in the Army or I can modernize a program and we'd have to do some borrowed military manpower, I probably would fall on the side of let's use some borrowed military manpower. I think it's okay to guard gates with soldiers. When I was a battalion commander at Fort Lewis, Washington, I was given a mission for 3 months. My battalion was responsible for all the gates at Fort Lewis, Washington. And it was a great mission for a battalion because you had to plan, you had to issue orders, you had to do checks, and so for me, it was training us. It was training us on command and control, it was training us on discipline, it was training us on standards. So I don't have problems with those kind of things. But we have to be careful that it doesn't become so widespread that it takes away from our ability to train and be ready to go. So we got to balance that. So I think we're going to see an increase in borrowed military manpower, but it can't be so much that it starts to degrade, and that's what we have to watch out for.
Good morning, sir. Morning. I'm Jan Murd. I'm the Director of Army Community Service. I'm just curious if you could tell us what the future of family programs looks like for the Army.
So we're fully funding family programs. I think it's $1.3 billion next in 14, which is a small increase over 13. So we continue to be dedicated to family programs. Now that said, where it gets confusing is we're also eliminating some civilian positions. I'm not saying they're in ACS, but across the Army. So some of them could affect our ability to deliver some of our family programs. So we got to make sure that the dollars we spend, we have the people there capable of continuing to deliver. But the one thing I ask of everybody with family programs is we have to make sure that we're only funding the programs that work. You know, I think we funded a lot of programs in the middle 2000s that really have not delivered. So we got to get rid of those and invest in the programs that we think are best for our families. And are giving us, and I need that feedback bottom up. So, and I've asked General Farrader, the MCOM commander, to come back to me on, lay out for me which programs are performing and which programs are not. So we can make sure we get the resources necessary to the most important programs. And I get feedback as I go around to which programs most people think are pretty good. I need more help in the ones that maybe aren't doing so good.
Good morning, sir. Eric Christensen, USAREUR G6, up here, top row.
To your right, sir, up at the top.
I have a question concerning stationing in USAREUR. It was extremely expensive to relocate here to Wiesbaden. Where do you see the future of USAREUR 10 years out? Stabilized? We can stay in place?
So our position, our Army position right now is where we are going, we see it to be stabilized. We think we've got it about the right size for the mission that we have to do. Now, does that mean there could be some tweaks around the edges? Maybe. But I think for the most part, where we're headed now is about where we want it to stay. Now, as we talked about earlier, there could be some fights with Congress over this, but I think the Army has done a pretty good job. We have clearly had a good plan that we've executed over the last 4 or 5 years in decreasing the size here in Europe. And I think our plan makes sense. So the Army position is we've done this right, we feel comfortable with where we are now, and I expect us to maintain this over the next several years. But we'll see. That's where we think we are. All right.
Sir, I've got a question via Facebook here from Tristan Bolden, and he asks, what are the U.S. Army's plans for JMRC Hohenfels?
JMRC is going to be the center point of our strategy to stay engaged with NATO and our NATO allies, turning it into a multinational training facility. It's always kind of been that way, but more so, where in fact, we're going to put a brigadier general back in JMRC in order to, because I think it's important as we deal with our allies. And we think it'll be a key part of our strategy as we continue to do multilateral training with our NATO partners and our allies going forward. I think it's very important for that. So I see it as a key piece of our future strategy.
Sir Anthony Gallegos, USAREUR G8. I have a question concerning civilian furloughs.
I always get nervous when G8s ask me questions. I know this could be a budget question. Go ahead.
Yeah, money makes people nervous. But you mentioned a little bit before about the civilian furloughs, how they had been reduced to current 14 days. And there's talks of going down to 7 and maybe even 0 days. So I'm curious as to when we're going to hear more concrete information. And then also, if there is going to be a mandatory number of civilian days that we'll have to take off, when will we expect that to take effect?
Yeah. So in order for it to, 14 days work, it has to take effect in June. Because the plan is 1 day per week, so you need 14 weeks, and so we got to make a decision by June. So the furloughs, just so you know, it's $780 million to the Army. So what we have to do is, if we go to 0 days, we got to find $780 million somewhere to pay for it, and that's what we're trying to do. So if we can do it, we'll do it. But we're still working our way through that right now. If it goes to 7 days, it's about half of that amount. So it's about 390. So we're working through that. We were able to get it down to 14 because we found some money. We're trying to get it down. We don't want to furlough anybody. I think it's unfair. I don't think it's the right thing to do. Secretary of the Army doesn't think it's the right thing to do. So we're trying to find the dollars to keep it from happening. We work it every day. My guess is within the next 30 days, we're going to have to make a decision on this. Okay?
Thank you.
Sir, I believe you have time for one more question.
Okay.
There's one down on the left-hand side, sir.
Okay, we got like 3 down here, so I'll take all 3 of them.
Sir Captain Fosnacker, 5th Corps. Do you see the Army continuing to focus on coin post-Afghanistan?
So what we're doing is, we need to continue to learn from what we've done over the last 12 years. So at all of our training centers, whether it be NTC, JRTC, or JMRC, we're going to what we're calling decisive action rotations, which is a combination of combined arms maneuver with some counterinsurgency and stability operations in a very complex environment. Because that's what I think we're going to see in the future. So although we'll spend some time on combined arms maneuver, which we haven't done in a while, there'll be a counterinsurgency and a stability aspect to it. I think it's important that we continue to train that, integrated in a more complex environment. So I think we'll continue to see that as we go forward.
Good morning, sir. Major Emma Toops, I'm with 5th Corps. My question kind of ties in with the previous. All 3 priorities with building readiness at home stations. My question is, what focus will medal-focused training take? Will it be based on more tactical level guidance for individual, team, and collective training, or will it be more focused by strategic and operational guidance for regional engagement threat?
Yes. Here's the reason. That's a great question, because we're having this conversation on a regular basis to determine what do you report against in terms of readiness. So as we go forward, this is what I'm looking for. So as you go into, the way it's going to be, you'll be in a reset phase, and you go into a training phase, and you'll be in an available phase. During a 10 or 11-month training phase, we're going to ask you to meet some requirements of combined arms maneuver. So we will ask you to do that, where you meet minimum requirements, which allows you then to have the capability to deploy to do higher-end operations if asked. Once that's finished, then you will focus on regional issues, regional culture, regional capabilities that you might need depending on where you're going. So there'll be a basic medal we want you to meet, and then there'll be a small number of regional measures we'll want you to do as you go forward. That's the intent. We're still working it though, and we'll iterate that, because we'll probably have to continue to work it as we go through it and see if what's working, what's not working. There's one question over here, I thought, somewhere. Did he leave? I thought he was standing there. Okay. All right. Well, thanks everybody. I appreciate it very much. Great questions. It's always so great when I come out here, and I always realized how engaged everybody is. And because you ask such great questions and you're paying attention to what's going on around you. And in my opinion, that's what makes us so great. Before I stop, I just want to thank everyone for your service, both our soldiers and civilians, the dedicated service you continue to have to this nation, all of you who continue to dedicate yourself to making sure that we're prepared. We couldn't do it without you. And I truly appreciate your sacrifices as we continue to move forward. So before I go, I'd like to recognize just a few people. I think we're prepared to do that. First,
Yes, sir. Sir, at this time we do have some special soldiers and civilians that we'd like you to recognize. They're on their way up front.
you're hiding on me.
We ask that the audience please remain seated during the presentations.
Well, first, let me just talk a little bit about these four individuals. First is Mr. Arthur Chi, who currently works at the Wiesbaden Army Lodge, enlisted in the U.S. Air Force in November 1945. Cool. Served for 23 years, retiring in 1968. He entered civilian service after leaving the Air Force, has worked at the commissary, DLA, CYS, and MWR, among others. It says here he loves to play poker. Is that true? Yeah. So this is a lot of experience here, so I'm not playing with him. I'm just letting you know that right now. Everybody talks about how well-liked and respected he is as a person, how much he cares about our soldiers, and he now, again, over 50 years of service. So if we could recognize him, please.
We honor Mr. Arthur Chi. In November 1945, Mr. Chi entered the United States Air Force on what would become a lifelong passion to serve the nation. Since then, Mr. Chi's service has taken on many faces in many different locations. Mr. Chi continues to serve our nation with the United States Army Garrison Wiesbaden, and today we will celebrate his dedication to the lapel pin signifying 50 years of federal service.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next is First Lieutenant Laura Means, commissioned in August of 2009, deployed to Afghanistan in support of OAF, responsible for all movement control and ISAF Joint Command. Volunteered for additional duty as part of Operation Outreach Afghanistan, helping bring humanitarian assistance to the Afghan people. A great example of our young leaders and those dedicated to ensuring we do the right thing. And we're going to award her the Bronze Star.
Attention to orders. This is to certify that the President of the United States of America, authorized by Executive Order 24 August 1962, has awarded the Bronze Star Medal to the following individuals. First Lieutenant Laura K. Means for her service as a platoon leader while deployed in support of Operation Enduring Freedom.
Okay,
Chief.
we have, I'm going to say something here, wait a minute. CWFU Robert, Rupee or Roop? Roop, yeah. Enlisted in the Army in 1994, became a warrant officer in 2002. Again, just deployed to Afghanistan in support of OIF, providing outstanding support as Chief Intelligence and Analyst for the Intelligence Directorate. I know what a difficult job that is over there in bringing all this together. And I know that Chief did an incredible job of helping us with many of the intelligence challenges that we had in Afghanistan. So Chief, I want to thank you as well, and we will award him the Bronze Star as well.
Chief Warrant Officer 4, Robert W. Roop, for his service as Senior Intelligence Analyst while deployed in support of Operation Enduring Freedom.
And then finally, First Sergeant Michael Levine. Yes, that's easy. Michael, it's not spelled that way, though. I just want you to know. Levine. But I know all about that. So, enlisted in the Army in 1993, has deployed 5 times to Afghanistan and Iraq. In addition to performing his normal duties, volunteers with nonprofit, which helps provide services to soldiers. He continues to do great work, deployed 5 deployments. Somebody who's continually raised his hand, willing to go, willing to serve in combat theaters, continue to excel. And with that, we want to award him the Bronze Star.
To First Sergeant Mike Levine for his service as First Sergeant, Headquarters and Support Company, 5th Corps, while deployed in support of Operation Enduring Freedom.
Let's give them all a round of applause.
General and Mrs. Odierno, we want to thank you for taking time in your schedule today to spend with us and wish you safe travels.
Thanks, everybody. God bless all of you. Thank you very much. Army strong.
This concludes today's town hall. I ask the members of the audience please remain in your seats until the official party departs. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attendance and participation in today's town hall with the Army Chief of Staff. You are now welcome.